I can imagine one of these board meetings being like, all right, team, what makes Lord of the Rings? We need it in our show. What about hobbits? We need a wizard. We need an item of power.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Why? The Rings of Power created a non-Tolkien origin story for Mithril. Because they're talentless hacks. After emerging as one of the main story threads of the entire first season, the showrunners reveal why they created it. There's actually a quote hold on. I believe they said in one of the articles, let me see. So one of the quotes says they wanted some wiggle room. Well, they wiggled $1 billion out of Amazon's wallet. They may have been sidelined by Amazon, meaning that Amazon has no reason to pay them, which means they wiggle their way out of the job. But let's continue. Following the conclusion of a disastrous first season, and as you can tell, I marked out Lord of the Rings because this is not Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power, the series, the creators a dish on how they decided to veer away from Tolkien's writing regarding the certain mind mythical element and everything else in the show. In an interview with Shillfair, the showrunner, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay addressed the lack of source material, explaining how the lack of source material of a rock, indestructible metal mithril came about. It came out of the ground. In your show, a Balrog and an elf fought near a tree, and lightning struck it, and it created it. That is actually, by the way, how they did it. Described the story as being made up to allow more room to create a backstory that isn't even true. JD said, definitely. Also, here's that part about the wiggle room, because people who obviously have strong feelings for canon or lore or just adapting what was written, how hard is that? I can imagine one of these board meetings being like, all right, team, what makes Lord of the Rings? We need it in our show. What about hobbits? We need a wizard. We need an item of power. We need some elves, some dwarfs. Good job, team. Also, while we're at it, let's reuse dialogue and scenes from Peter Jackson's trilogy, so our show can be the origin of it all. Yay! And that's how that meeting would go. Now, there was a paragraph before this one that I didn't include, because all it talks about is the Peter Jackson trilogies. They wanted to link the mithril from Rings of Power into the Hobbit and then into the Fellowship of the Ring. When Bilbo finds the mithril armor and then he gives it to Frodo and the Fellowship. In this section, they talked about the mithril, like a mythos, because they wanted the rings to be forged as something powerful. Even though the rings could have been forged out of tinfoil, because it doesn't matter what they're made from, it's the magic and power that goes into them is what makes them powerful. McKay also wanted to stress out that he wished the mithril would be a wider lore and creation for the Rings of Power. In particular, the rings are like a nuclear bomb in Middle-earth. It's the magic. It's the power put into it. It could, like I said, it could be made out of anything. It changes everything. Everyone needs a ring. Everyone wants a ring. It creates immortality. Well, it doesn't really create, it extends your life, but it's immortality. The one ring defines everything for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah, and you took thousands of years for the Second Age and condensed it in just introduced a couple of years. We have no idea where we're at, by the way, in Rings of Power. It defines the Second and Third Age. Well, yeah, Tolkien's books, not your crappy show. The Rings of Power, our first season, concluded after an absolute disaster, as well as 8 episodes of 1 hour and 10 minutes of pretty much all boredom. Amazon also had to suspend, after the release of the first 2 episodes, for review bombing that never happened. It was just a bad show. There was also considerable criticism aimed at more specifically aspects of the show, including Morphet Clark's portrayal of Gladriel. You mean Carindel? Or Guy Ladriel? Or a plank of wood? Also the costumes. Well, the costumes were terrible, but that's the only 2 criticisms you can pull up. Okay. The rest of it is like, oh, we have big plans, I think the funniest part is that they plan to have character arcs. What is Guy Ladriel gonna go from a Karen to a super Karen? Well, that's it till next time.